The late afternoon sun stretched long golden beams across the quiet cul-de-sac as I lifted the last cardboard box out of the moving truck. Sweat trickled down my neck, but the feeling inside me was pure triumph. This was it. The moment I had imagined through endless apartment leases, cramped spaces, and neighbors who vacuumed at midnight for sport. My own home, my own land, and best of all, not a single HOA rule in sight. No approved color palette, no grass length measurements, no decorative wreath restrictions. Complete, beautiful, liberating freedom. I nudged the door open with my hip, stepped into the living room, and set the box down beside the neatly stacked pile of others. The place still echoed with the hollow emptiness of a home waiting to be lived in. I smiled, imagining all the ways I would fill it. A big couch, art on the walls, maybe even a garden out back. For the first time in years, I could do whatever I wanted without a committee's permission slip. I stood in the quiet, letting the moment soak in, when suddenly, bang, bang, bang. The pounding on my front door wasn't the tentative knock of a neighbor offering a welcome. It was urgent, aggressive, the kind of knock reserved for law enforcement or someone convinced they have authority. I paused mid-step. Seriously? Already? The knocking came again, sharper this time. Whoever was outside had zero patience. I crossed the room and opened the door. There she stood. If someone had said, "Draw a textbook suburban enforcer," I would have sketched her. Blonde bob cut that didn't move even in the breeze, sunglasses perched on her nose despite the sun setting behind her, a pastel cardigan draped over her shoulders like she was posing for the cover of a Neighborhood Watch newsletter. And in her hand, a clipboard, the kind that suggested she had already made a list of my sins without even knowing my name. Her lips were pressed so tightly together that I wondered if she ever ate anything wider than a straw. She looked me up and down as though evaluating a trespasser rather than a homeowner. "I'm Karen," she announced, her tone flat and authoritative. "President of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." There was a dramatic pause, as though I should gasp, bow, or at least look impressed. Instead, I scratched the back of my neck. Nice to meet you?" She didn't return the sentiment. Her eyes were already scanning behind me, the boxes, the open door, the visible chaos of moving, and most importantly, the lack of any HOA-approved welcome mat. "What's going on here?" she demanded. "I'm moving in," I said slowly, unsure how that could possibly be confusing. Her nostrils flared. "I wasn't notified. Notified by who?" I asked. "By you," she snapped, as if that were obvious. "All new residents are required to submit a move-in notice to the HOA at least 30 days in advance." "Oh," I said, nodding sympathetically. "Well, that explains the issue." Her posture relaxed ever so slightly, anticipating an apology. "I'm not in your HOA." Silence. A solid 3 seconds of absolute stunned silence. Her eyebrows shot up her forehead. "What do you mean you're not in the HOA? This house isn't part of Willow Creek," I explained. "I double-checked before buying." She blinked, stunned. "That's impossible." "Nope," I said, leaning casually against the doorframe. "The boundary line ends down the street. 4 houses that way." She stared at me like I'd just announced I was founding a new lawless nation in the heart of her territory. "We govern this entire neighborhood," she insisted. I shook my head. "County property lines say otherwise." She whipped her clipboard open with a flourish. Papers clipped inside fluttered dramatically, though none of them, I noticed, actually appeared to be maps. More like violation forms waiting for victims. Her gaze swept across my lawn, cataloging offenses that didn't exist. Then her eyes fell on my trash cans by the curb, waiting for pickup the next morning. Her entire body stiffened. "Those trash cans," she said slowly, "are not supposed to be out until the approved time." "It's Sunday," I replied. "Pickup's at 6 a.m. "The approved time is after 5 a.m., she corrected. "Not the night before." "Well, good news," I said with a smile. "I'm not subject to that rule." The corner of her eye twitched violently, as if the concept of someone existing beyond her control was physically painful. "And your car," she added sharply, pointing at my sedan parked in my own driveway. "You can't park it there like that." "Like what?" "At an angle." "It's not angled," I said. "It's parked straight." She stepped closer, squinting. "It appears slightly angled." I stepped onto the porch beside her and looked at the car. It wasn't angled, not even close. NASA engineers couldn't have parked it straighter. It's fine, I said. It's not, she argued. It is, I repeated. It's a violation. For an HOA I'm not in, I reminded. Her face turned a shade of red I usually only saw on malfunctioning thermostats. And that wreath, she said, pointing accusingly toward my front door. I glanced back. The sunflower wreath? Yes, she said sharply. It's not seasonally appropriate. Why not? It's July. Sunflowers are summer, not this part of summer, she said, enunciating every word like she was explaining quantum mechanics to a toddler. I stared at her. She stared back, her jaw set with the determination of someone who had never once been told no. Well, I said lightly, since I'm not in your HOA, the wreath stays. Her breath caught, and she took a horrified step back as though I had just confessed to a felony. Then she leaned in, eyes narrowed. You can't just live here without guidelines. That's exactly the plan, I said. She sputtered, then straightened her shoulders. This isn't over. She turned on her heel and stormed down the walkway, her shoes clicking with militaristic precision. Halfway to the street, she spun back around, pointing a trembling finger at me. Not over. Then she marched off, her clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon she intended to reload. I stood in the doorway, watching her retreat, and couldn't help laughing under my breath. Day one in my HOA-free home, and Karen had already declared war. Welcome to the neighborhood, I guess. I woke the next morning feeling refreshed and oddly proud of myself. It was my first night in the new house. Creaky floors, unfamiliar shadows, boxes still stacked everywhere, but I slept better than I had in months. Freedom, it turned out, made an excellent mattress. I brewed some coffee, savoring the smell as it filled the kitchen, then stepped outside onto the porch to get a breath of cool morning air. I barely had time to lift the mug to my lips when I saw a figure standing motionless in my yard. Karen. She was perfectly still, like a lawn ornament someone forgot to pack away. Except lawn ornaments didn't glare at you with the intensity of a hawk spotting prey. She wasn't alone either. On either side of her stood two other women, both holding clipboards and wearing matching expressions of polite hostility. One had a visor, the other had a whistle around her neck. A whistle? At 7 in the morning. I stared for a moment, wondering if I was still asleep. Maybe the coffee hadn't kicked in yet. Good morning? I tried. Karen didn't respond immediately. She simply stared at me as if she were waiting for me to confess something. You're trespassing, I finally said. She sniffed. We're conducting an inspection on my property on behalf of the Willow Creek HOA, she declared. I took a long, exaggerated sip of coffee. We're doing this again, huh? Karen ignored my tone, turning to her clipboard and flipping through pages as though she were shuffling legal documents instead of blank forms she clearly pre-filled with imagined violations. We've reviewed your house, she announced loudly, as though addressing a crowd. We? I echoed, glancing at the two silent women behind her. They looked like they'd been dragged out of bed for this. Clipboard number 1 had her hair in curlers. Clipboard number 2 still wore pajamas under a cardigan. Karen continued without acknowledging my confusion. You are in violation of at least 6 HOA ordinances. I blinked. Still not in your OA. Her jaw tightened. We've allowed you the night to reflect on your behavior. Most new residents prefer to correct their mistakes after receiving a warning. Warning? I said. When did I get a warning? Yesterday, she replied, as if this were obvious. I stared at her. That wasn't a warning, that was... whatever that was. Karen tapped her clipboard decisively. We have documented several infractions. For starters, she pointed dramatically at my house. Your shutters. I looked at them. Gray, neat, nice, not dented, not crooked, not peeling. What about them, I asked. They are the wrong color. For who, I asked. For the community, she said, gesturing vaguely. Your community, I reminded her, does not include me. She let out a frustrated exhale that sounded like she had trained for it. Behind her, clipboard number 2 raised a timid hand. Karen, is the house in our community? Because I think... Karen snapped her fingers. We'll address questions during the debrief, Miranda. Miranda lowered her hand like a chastised child. Karen pointed to my front door. You must remove the wreath immediately. Still July, I said. It is late July, she corrected. Your decor should transition to a neutral theme by now. Neutral? Like what? A simple bow, or nothing at all. Minimalism is encouraged. Who said minimalism is encouraged? The board, she said sternly. I looked at Miranda and Curler's lady. They stared at their clipboards like they had been asked not to make eye contact. Karen moved on. Next, your shrubs. I looked at the two little shrubs by my walkway, barely knee-high, completely harmless. What's wrong with them, I asked. Karen lifted a small measuring tape and extended it outward. Shrubs must be trimmed to between 18 and 20 inches for uniformity. Yours appear to be 22, 2 inches, I repeated. They're too tall by 2 inches? Yes, she said proudly. We are very thorough. Again, I said slowly, this has nothing to do with me. Karen narrowed her eyes. Uniformity keeps property values high. This house isn't affecting your property values, I said. Otherwise the county would have put me in your jurisdiction. That word, jurisdiction, made her twitch. I saw it happen, a tiny spasm around her left eye. We'll return to that, she muttered coldly. But first, your vehicle. She spun dramatically toward my driveway. I looked too, just in case something catastrophic had happened overnight. Nope. My car was still there. Still straight. Still doing absolutely nothing wrong. What about my car? I asked. It cannot be parked like that. It's in my driveway. Driveway parking is only permitted at an angle of no more than 5 degrees, she said. Why? To maintain aesthetic flow. My mouth fell open. Aesthetic flow. Karen nodded solemnly as though delivering scripture. Miranda whispered, I don't think this house is... Karen shot her a death glare so sharp Miranda nearly shrank. Then Karen snapped her fingers dramatically and held up a laminated map, the same one she tried to weaponize yesterday. According to this, she said, we clearly have jurisdiction over your property. The map was very obviously upside down. It's upside down, I said. Karen's cheeks reddened as she flipped it over with a stiff movement. Then she squinted at it, rotating it slightly, then squinting harder. Curler's lady timidly spoke. Karen, I think that map's from before the expansion. The old line stops before his street. Karen froze. What? She said sharply. Yeah, Curler's lady added, pulling her own paper out. The HOA tried to get this section voted in a few years ago, but the county didn't approve it. Something about zoning. Karen's head snapped toward me. Her eyes were wide, wild, terrified. You checked with the county? She asked in a whisper. Of course I checked, I said. I don't buy houses blindly. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked momentarily speechless. A rare, delicate moment I wanted to preserve like fine art. So you're telling me, Karen said breathlessly, that you're living here without supervision? Supervision? I echoed. You mean oversight? Same thing, she said. I sipped my coffee. Yep, that's the idea. Karen clutched her clipboard against her chest like a life preserver. Her voice dropped into a panicked whisper. If people start thinking they can just live however they want, it will be chaos. Chaos, I said, nodding as if the idea intrigued me. Sounds fun. Her lips pressed into a thin, horrified line. You will not last a week. I think I will. You won't, she insisted. We'll see. Karen let out a trembling breath, spun around and marched away, her entourage scrambling to follow. As they crossed the yard, I heard her muttering frantically. Words like petition, rezone, board meeting and emergency bylaws. Clearly, this wasn't over. Not even close.